I've been in cybersecurity for over 25 years, back when we didn't even call it cyber. In that time, I've seen countless enterprises pass comprehensive security assessments only to suffer major breaches months later. The most dangerous vulnerabilities aren't the ones your assessment found, they're the ones it never looked for. I'm Kirk Jones, president and founder of Black Lake Security, and today I want to share the critical blind spots that traditional security assessments consistently miss, and how you can identify them in your own environment. Most enterprise security assessments focus on what should be working, not what actually is working in production environments. This creates a fundamental disconnect between assessed security and operational security. Traditional assessments evaluate security tools as if they're perfectly configured and maintained according to vendor specifications. But here's the reality. Configuration drift begins within weeks of any security implementation. Organizations change network segments, add applications, modify user access patterns, and adjust firewall rules. Each change creates potential gaps that standard assessments never evaluate. I've seen organizations with compliant security architectures where 40% of their firewall rules were effectively bypassed due to operational changes made after the initial assessment. The assessment showed green across the board, but the actual security posture had degraded significantly. Here's what most assessments miss. They don't audit your actual security posture versus your documented security posture. They review policies, check configurations against baselines, and validate that tools are deployed correctly. But they don't evaluate whether those tools are actually functioning as intended in your current operational environment. The key blind spot is operational security validation. You need to regularly audit not just whether your security tools are configured correctly, but whether they're actually providing the protection you expect in your current environment. Here's a framework you can use. Conduct quarterly operational security audits where you test actual traffic flows, validate that security controls are intercepting the threats they're designed to catch, and verify the recent operational changes haven't introduced new vulnerabilities. Security assessments excel at evaluating technology, but they consistently miss the human systems that determine whether technology actually works in practice. This is where some of the most critical vulnerabilities hide. Most assessments focus on technical controls, firewalls, endpoint protection, access management systems. But they don't evaluate how well these systems integrate with human workflows and decision-making processes. The result is technically sound security that fails in real-world operation scenarios. Here's what I see consistently. Organizations with robust technical security controls but inadequate change management processes. When IT teams need to make urgent operational changes, they often bypass security controls temporarily. And those temporary bypasses become permanent because there's no systematic process to review and remediate them. Traditional assessments also miss the procurement and vendor management blind spots. I've worked with enterprises that have excellent security policies but poor vendor evaluation processes. They'll spend months evaluating security tools, technical capabilities, but fail to assess whether their IT team has the expertise to properly configure and maintain it. The biggest human systems blind spot is what I call security theater versus security reality. Organizations implement security controls that look impressive in assessments, but don't actually improve the security posture because they're not integrated with operational workflows. Here's a practical evaluation framework. For every security control in your environment, ask 3 questions. First, do your operational teams understand how this control works and what is designed to protect? Second, what happens to this control when you need to make urgent operational changes? Third, do they have processes to ensure this control remains effective as your environment evolves? Another critical blind spot is the expertise gap. Many organizations deploy sophisticated security tools but lack the specialized knowledge to optimize them effectively. We regularly find clients with security investments that are performing at 30–40% of their potential because they don't have the right expertise to tune and maintain them properly. The most sophisticated security blind spot involves ecosystem visibility, understanding how your security controls interact with each other and with your broader IT environment. Traditional assessments evaluate individual security tools but miss the complex interdependencies that determine overall security effectiveness. Modern enterprise environments are highly interconnected. Your email security affects your endpoint protection, your network segmentation impacts your identity management, and your cloud security controls interact with your on-premises infrastructure. But most assessments evaluate these components in isolation. missing critical interaction points where vulnerabilities can emerge. Here's a real-world example of this blind spot. I work with a client whose individual security tools all passed assessment criteria, but they had a critical vulnerability in how their identity management system interacted with their cloud access controls. The assessment evaluated each system separately and missed the fact that certain user roles could bypass cloud security controls through legitimate identity management processes. The ecosystem blind spot also involves understanding your security control dependencies. Many organizations don't realize that their security effectiveness depends on proper integration between multiple tools. When one component fails or is misconfigured, it can create cascading vulnerabilities that assessments don't detect. Another critical area is what I call security control redundancy analysis. Organizations can assume that having multiple security layers provides better protection, but without proper ecosystem visibility, you can't determine whether those layers are actually complementary or creating conflicting policies that reduce overall effectiveness. Here's how to evaluate your own ecosystem visibility. Map the data flows between your security tools. Identify critical integration points, and test whether your security controls work together as intended. Look for scenarios where legitimate business processes might bypass security controls through system interactions. The vendor ecosystem blind spot is equally important. Many enterprises work with multiple security vendors, but lack visibility into how those vendor relationships affect their overall security posture. Different vendors may have conflicting recommendations, overlapping capabilities, or integration challenges that create vulnerabilities. Finally, assess your security intelligence sharing. In complex environments, your security tools need to share threat intelligence and coordinate responses. Many assessments miss whether this coordination is actually happening effectively. The most critical security vulnerabilities often hide in the gaps between what assessments evaluate and what actually determines your security effectiveness. Configuration drift, human systems integration, and ecosystem visibility represent blind spots that can leave you vulnerable even when traditional assessments show you're compliant. The key is moving beyond compliance-focused assessments to operational security evaluation. Focus on how your security actually works in practice, not just whether it meets theoretical standards. If you found these insights valuable and you want to explore how these blind spots might apply to your specific environment, I'm Kirk Jones with Black Security. Helping Fortune 500 organizations identify and address these critical security gaps is exactly what we do.